Hey, yo, salute to the people. It's the social forecast. Thursday, April 9th, 2020. Morning coffee ride. It's the self quarantine edition. Usually, when I do these morning coffee rides, I'm driving, I'm on the road, I'm in my car, I'm on my way to work or to get my coffee or somewhere. But we in the house. Um, let's just get right to it. Charlamagne the guy goes in on Ellen DeGeneres yesterday on Donkey of the Day. I had a couple things I want to touch on because I'm real interested to see what's going to happen with this backlash. But an interesting little twist. So, um, so Charlamagne the God does his donkey of the day yesterday, and I've watched a couple people touch base on it before I decided to, touch on this myself. Wasn't sure if I was going to do it yesterday on a midday juice um, installment or if I was going to save it this morning for my morning coffee ride. And the reason why I decided to wait was because I started thinking about the dynamic that usually happens when stories like this come out. Usually, what you see is an individual makes a comment somewhat pertaining to the LGBTQ community, and then you see that entire community go in on that individual. And usually it's unforgiving. It's, cancel that individual. They got to apologize. They got to make donations. They got to kowtow, bow down. And then you hope to see that individual recover from that. So what I wanted to wait and see was if there was going to be as much backlash for Charlamagne for issuing the donkey of the day and going in the way he did as there would potentially be for Ellen. And this is what you hear people talking about this morning. Look, I've put this question out. I've posed this question before. How many times are we going to allow, and not just the LGBTQ community, but any group, any protected group, any movement, to critique and criticize and cancel people who speak their mind, speak their opinion on certain things, or tell an insensitive joke, or get caught out there doing something that is these days politically incorrect, socially incorrect, which is career suicide potentially for a lot of people. But then not hold accountable that group or a member from that group or community when they do something insensitive, when they do something politically incorrect. And I'll take that a step further. Coffee's trash this morning. I'll take it a step further. What Ellen DeGeneres did on her home edition of her show that she was doing the other day wasn't just socially insensitive, wasn't just politically incorrect. She made a reference or a joke in a time when people are dying from this virus who are imprisoned. And I heard some people touch online, and even when Charlamagne was doing his Donkey of the Day session, he even played some audio clips. There are dozens of people in prisons, dozens, hundreds even, who are dying and sick from this virus. He played a clip of a woman whose husband is incarcerated right now, not for violent offenses, not for any sexual crimes or anything like that, not for murder, but for drug offenses, different levels of drug offenses. And there are people in prison, people on short time, people who are, not going to be doing long time, but now they're sick. They're being quarantined in these prisons. They're being dragged away from population that they're in, sick and displaying symptoms, and these inmates aren't seeing their fellow inmates again. And then you have staff members come in and remove their belongings and don't say anything, don't contact their loved ones. So in one of these clips Charlamagne played, this woman was looking for her husband. She was calling the warden. She was calling, trying to reach staff at the prison, trying to reach local hospitals, and no one would take her call. No one would get back to her. No one would tell her the status of her husband. And then you had several other inmates posting on Facebook Live, because if you're not in tune with, you know, some of the things that you're allowed to do in prison in 2020. Um, some of these inmates do have access to Instagrams and Facebook Lives, and you know, depending on, um, what part of the prison they're in. If they're in general population, they're not um, involved in any disciplinary action. They're not in solitary or anything like that. So they're allowed to participate in some of these social things to kind of keep in touch with the world and society in some way, um, so to speak. And several of these inmates are on these Facebook lives and on these other social mediums, basically saying, "Look, it's bad in here. We're dying in here." And Charlemagne's point was pretty much, if you're going to, as a major figure, right, a world-renowned talk show host and comedian, because let's be real, Ellen DeGeneres is a major public figure. She, for the most part, is liked by everybody. I've liked her. Um, I've liked her material. I've watched her show in the past, and for the most part, I've always thought she was pretty funny. But Charlemagne's point is, listen, for you to reference your mansion or mini mansion as feeling like you're in prison or feeling like you're in jail because you can't go outside. Listen, you have the luxuries within the confines of your little mini mansion that prisoners don't have. The shit most normal people don't have. You have not just those luxuries, with the lack of the only thing you can't do is being to go outside, but you don't have your freedoms stripped away from you outside of you being able to go outside. You don't have um, the potential to be treated potentially as a slave, which is the one exception in the Constitution and the laws, outside of slavery being abolished. If you are imprisoned, if you commit a crime and you are incarcerated, then that is the loophole in the Constitution for you to be treated as a slave. And these prisoners are dying. And for Ellen to make the joke, it's like prison and everyone here is gay. I don't want to focus too much on the reference itself. I don't want to focus too much on what Charlamagne the God touched on. Although, salute to him, because certain people in his position would be afraid to publicly do that. And for all the backlash that Charlamagne gets for his commentary and for, how he comes at certain people on the Breakfast Club when he does interviews, I've never thought that he would, the play it safe, super politically correct. I'm afraid to say the wrong thing to the wrong people for fear of any backlash or, harm it might come to his career. So I've always saluted and respected Charlamagne the God for that. But what my question is, right? I don't want to make this morning coffee ride too long, but what my question is, does he get more backlash than Ellen DeGeneres? I mean, he went in respectfully, though, and everything that he said was facts. Everything that he said was true. In the world, to me, at least, the social communities that are around this, this culture, right? Who are tuned in to what's going on in the urban environments, urban communities, in these jails and prisons around the nation, are watching, I feel like. And we want to see one, if Ellen is going to address, the fact that she was, at the very least, insensitive in her comments, culturally clueless in her comments, like Charlamagne the God said. Will she apologize? Will it be sincere? And then what will she do to follow up and solidify that apology? That's the first part. It's only the first part. The second part is, will she then just be accepted and it's okay, we rock with Ellen, she apologized, we good, let's move on? Because if so, is that unfair compared to the many people who we have seen torn down, canceled, like dragged all the way through the mud for saying things that offend the LGBTQ community? Now, are the rest of us going to be that much up in arms, that, offended when a member of the LGBTQ community does something out of pocket, because this was out of pocket. And it's always interesting to see how the LGBTQ community, the feminist community, apologize, the feminist community, the Me Too movement, they come together so quick and so hard on the everybody else community, right? The everybody else group. Um, no holds barred, don't want to let go no matter what until they feel good and ready. But the everybody else community, when it's a member of one of those communities who steps out of pocket, who does something offensive, who says something insensitive, seems like we're just willing to, let it go if they offer up the slightest in apologies. And I'm interested to see if that's going to be the case. Or if it goes the other way and everybody's up in arms about Charlamagne the God because she was just joking, or she was just, trying to make light of a situation. But when people are dying, it's not a situation to make light of. And if you want to say, and Charlamagne even touched on this, I feel like he covered his bases very well. And I'm paraphrasing, but he's pretty much said, for those of you who are going to argue that, well, these people are prisoners, they did the crime, so they have to do the time. And if you're going to be sensitive or feel a way about Ellen's joke, remember that these people did what they did to end up in these situations. You're 75% correct. I'll agree with you. You do the crime, you have to do the time. And I'll even extend the courtesy of agreement to you that if they didn't do things to put themselves in that situation, they wouldn't be there. But crime in and of itself, and paying your debt to society, so to speak, and having that responsibility as a person who violated the law, broke the law, and got caught for doing it, they're in the situation they themselves put themselves in, and nobody else is at fault for that, whether you joke about it or not. Excuse me. And the realization is this. This is the realization. There are quite a number of people, and Charlamagne touched on this also, quite a number of people who are in jail and or prison awaiting trial, don't have the money to fight their case from home, from the street, which is due process, right? If you're innocent until proven guilty, there are thousands, tens of thousands nationwide of people who are incarcerated just waiting. They have not yet been found guilty of the crime that they have been accused of. So we don't know what the outcome for those people would be. And if they are accused, you can't say, well, they're guilty, they did the crime. They have not had their day in court yet. Those people are sick and are dying and are exposed also. People who were convicted, who did plead guilty, who have had their day in court, vast majority of those people are nonviolent offenders. People hear the term jail or prison and automatically, criminal, lock them up, throw away the key. The worst among us, murderer, rapist. No. The majority of prison inmates, the majority of people who are incarcerated are not violent offenders and are not sexual offenders. The majority are people who are in for nonviolent drug offenses. There are a lot of different ways that you can wind up incarcerated. And then there are several different levels of that crime. And just because you're a prisoner, just because you committed a crime, just because you found yourself in prison, albeit due to your own choices and actions, granted, but you're still a human being and you still don't deserve to be in a place where this never before seen virus and pandemic is killing people, and where the rest of the world is all practicing social distancing, but you can't do that in prison. Prisons that, mind you, are already overpopulated and overcrowded. And for those reasons alone, at the very least, Ellen should see the same backlash, if not more, as we have seen every other public figure who has said any other insensitive thing or had to be fired or resigned or suspended from their job, right? Several names come to mind. Stephen A. Smith, for one, who has been suspended in the past by ESPN for comments that he has made that have been viewed as insensitive. He's had to apologize publicly. We want to see the same. I'll speak for myself. I want to see the same pressure be applied to Ellen DeGeneres. I have no issue with her outside of this situation. I have followed her career. I've watched, sitcoms that she was in years before she became a huge talk show host. I have watched her stand up. I have no problem with her outside of this situation. But just like you, if you want to say prisoners, people who are incarcerated, put themselves in that situation, and so they deserve to be where they are, and there's nothing wrong with what she said because she's just making a joke. Well, the same way that those people have to deal with the consequences of their actions, if that is your premise, then Ellen has to deal with the consequences of her actions. You said what you said. Stand by what you said. As far as Charlamagne goes, before my allergies start to get too crazy, as far as Charlamagne goes, and I'll close it out, I don't think he should get any backlash. I don't think there's anything wrong at all, any way, shape, or form, with anything that Charlamagne said in his donkey of the day, because I feel like he was professional, respectful in the way he approached the situation. I felt like he had great references that he cited to back up, what his disdain was for Ellen's comments. And then he even had sources and provided clips of real people who were really speaking out in the position from which the reference of this joke came from and was directed toward. How can you be mad at it? How can you not respect it? I feel like, as far as Donkey of the Day, this is one of his best ever, and I've been following them pretty much since the inception of that little segment that he does on the Breakfast Club. But y'all know me. I don't pretend to know everything. I just know what I know. More interested to see what happens and what y'all think of it. And are we going to let Ellen off the hook with this one? Are we going to demand that she address the social crowd, address the public, address her audience, address everybody else? Are we just going to let this one fade to black? Are we going to let this fade to black with a simple apology? Are we going to require more? And if she does apologize, is it genuine? If she does apologize, is she doing it just to quell whatever backlash she may be receiving? Are we not even on it like that? We say, listen, this is Ellen. She's a comedian. Because I'll play devil's advocate just briefly. For the other comedians who have argued, listen, creative license. A comic should not be subject to the same backlash that every other public or entertainment figure is, because we have the creative license as comedians that it is our job to joke in times of turmoil or stress or pain or world issues, whatever is going on in the media. We have the creative license as comedians to try and turn those situations into a funny moment, not as a way to make light of or joke about any one situation, but to try and bring light to a difficult situation. And many comedians have argued that in the past. And and a matter of fact, you can go back through the footage and play the game tapes. Charlamagne the God himself has argued for comedians in the past on that same premise. So does that fall under the protection of, listen, it's creative license? We have that ability as comedians. If nobody else should be subject to backlash, comedians should be. Rappers, people who put things in songs as a way to process, as a way to get that out and experience that secondhand, for people who are listening to those songs and that music. If nobody else should have that creative license, artists should. Is that how you feel? I don't know. I'm just posing the question. But like, comment, and subscribe. It's the Social Forecast Morning Coffee Ride with the shitty ass coffee that was not made right. Let me know what y'all think. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.